The building had been empty for 30 years. Not abandoned in the way people forget a house, but abandoned in the way people refuse to remember a nightmare. The roof sagged under the weight of moss and silence. Windows stared out like blind eyes. No one spoke about it. No one pointed when they drove past. But everyone knew. Everyone knew the story of the last night the lights were on, when the screaming started and never stopped. The town built a new road to avoid this place. They let the forest grow thick around it, as if nature itself wanted to bury the memory. But buildings like this don't die. They wait. The gate was never locked. That was the first thing people noticed. No padlock, no chain, no warning signs. Just rusted iron standing open, inviting anyone foolish enough to step through. The path beyond it was overgrown, but not entirely. There were footprints in the mud. Fresh ones. Someone had been here recently. Someone had walked these grounds, past the dead fountain, past the collapsed greenhouse, toward the main entrance where the door hung crooked on its hinges. The wind carried a sound that might have been a groan from the old wood, or might have been something else. Something that remembered why this place was left to rot. Inside, the air was thick and cold, even in summer. The corridor stretched ahead, lined with doors that were all closed. Every single one. Someone had taken the time to shut them, years after the building was condemned. That should have been impossible. The floor was littered with debris, broken glass, fallen plaster, but the doors were sealed tight, as if whatever was behind them needed to stay there. A wheelchair sat overturned in the middle of the hall, its wheels still spinning slightly, though no one had touched it. The sound of its creaking filled the silence, a slow rhythm, like a heartbeat that refused to stop. In the third room on the left, the mirror was still intact. That was strange. Every other mirror in the building had been smashed, but this one remained, hanging crooked on the wall, its surface cloudy with age. When you looked into it, you saw the room behind you, the rusted bed, the cracked ceiling, the door that was now closed even though you left it open. But you didn't see yourself. The glass reflected everything except the person standing in front of it. People who came here said the mirror showed them the room as it was on the last night, full of shadows that moved on their own, full of whispers that sounded like names they didn't want to hear. The basement stairs were the worst part. The bulb at the top flickered, casting shadows that danced like living things. The steps descended into a darkness so thick it felt solid, like pressing your face against cloth. At the bottom, there was a door. It was the only door in the entire building that was open. Beyond it, the darkness breathed. Not wind. Not drafts. A slow, rhythmic expansion and contraction, as if the basement itself had lungs. And from that darkness came a sound, soft at first, then growing louder. The sound of footsteps climbing up. One step. Then another. Then a third. Coming closer. Coming faster. And the bulb went out. The door at the bottom of the basement stairs was old wood, warped by moisture, its paint peeling in long strips like dead skin. You had to pull hard, and when it finally gave, the sound was a low groan that seemed to come from the house itself. Beyond it, a narrow hallway led to a single room. The air was different there, still and dry, as if the room had been sealed off from the rest of the world. On a small table in the center sat a photograph in a silver frame. The woman in the photograph looked familiar, though you could not place her. She wore a high-collared dress from another century, and her eyes held a quiet defiance. Beside her stood a man, but his face had been scratched away, the paper gouged deep in angry lines. Someone had wanted him erased. On the back of the frame, a date was carved, 1897. Beneath it, in tiny letters, the words, "She knew too much." The journal was bound in cracked leather, its pages yellowed and brittle. The handwriting was cramped, panicked, as if written in a hurry. It told the story of a woman who had come to this house as a bride, only to discover its secrets. "The walls," she wrote, "remember everything. They hear the whispers at night. And the mirrors," she warned, "are not for looking into. They are for watching you." The entry stopped mid-sentence, the ink trailing off in a jagged line. A sound came from behind you, soft at first, like a finger tapping glass. You turned, but the hallway was empty. The tapping grew louder, more insistent, and you realized it was coming from the photograph. The silver frame was vibrating against the table, the woman's eyes in the picture seeming to shift, to focus on something beyond your shoulder. Then the scratching began, from inside the walls, from above the ceiling, from everywhere at once. You ran for the stairs, but the door at the top was already swinging shut. Not slamming, but closing with a deliberate, patient slowness, as if something was savoring the moment. The light from the bulb above flickered once, twice, and then died, leaving you in absolute darkness. In that silence, you heard a woman's voice, calm and clear, speaking directly into your ear. "You should not have come down here. Now you will stay with me." The frame stilled. You held your breath, waiting. Then the woman in the photograph lifted her hand. Not a trick of the light, not a shadow. Her fingers pressed against the glass from inside, leaving a faint smear. Her lips moved, forming words you could not hear. You leaned closer, and the glass fogged with her breath. She was trying to tell you something, something urgent, and the cold air around you grew heavy with the weight of her silence. The woman's lips formed a single word, over and over. "Run." You stumbled back, the chair scraping against the floor. The photograph fell silent, her face frozen once more. But the word echoed in your mind, a command you could not ignore. You turned and fled down the hallway, the darkness swallowing you whole. Behind you, the sound of soft laughter, like wind through dry leaves, followed at your heels. The stairs groaned beneath your feet, each step a confession. The blue light grew stronger, casting your shadow long and distorted against the wall. You reached the bottom and found a door, old and scarred, its iron handle cold to the touch. You did not want to open it, but the laughter behind you had stopped. Silence pressed in, thick and expectant. The door swung open on its own, revealing a room that should not have existed. The room was a prison of words. Every inch of wall was covered in writing, the same cramped hand as the journal. The woman's story, her warning, her plea. In the center, a chair faced a mirror. But the mirror did not show you. It showed a sunlit room, a garden beyond a window, a woman in a white dress sitting with her back to you. She turned, and it was her, the woman from the photograph, alive, young, and terrified. She pressed her hand to the glass, and you pressed yours to match. The surface was cold, but you felt a pulse, faint and quick. Her lips moved again, and this time you heard her voice, thin and distant, like a memory. "He is coming." The shadow behind her grew, a shape with no form, and she turned to face it. The mirror went dark. You were alone in the room of words, and the door behind you clicked shut. Her voice cracked like old paper. "He feeds on the forgotten." You turned from the mirror, but the room had changed. The writings on the walls were bleeding, ink dripping like tears. The chair creaked behind you, though no one sat there. The mirror showed the woman now turning, her face twisted in terror. A child's laughter echoed from somewhere deep, and the blue light flickered, dying to a dull pulse. You fled the room into a hallway that stretched too far. The walls breathed, wallpaper curling like fingers. A child's handprint glistened on the door ahead, still wet. You touched it. It was warm. The door swung open on its own, revealing a nursery frozen in time. A rocking horse rocked gently, no one on it. The crib's mobile played a tinny lullaby, and the blue light pooled under the bed. A paper lay on the floor, crayon scribbles sharp and angry. A house, a stick figure with yellow hair, a tall black shape with red eyes. The words underneath were shaky, "He comes at night." The blue light swelled from the closet, and the door creaked open. Inside, no clothes, just a small mirror reflecting your own face, but younger, terrified. Your younger self mouthed the same words. The woman's hand broke through the mirror, fingers gripping the frame. She pulled herself halfway out, her body flickering like a bad signal. She looked at you with hollow eyes. "You have to remember. The shadow is your shadow. He is what you left behind. The blue light exploded, and the nursery vanished. You stood in a white room, empty, except for a single door. The door was smooth, no handle, no keyhole. But the blue light bled from beneath it, a thin river of memory. You pressed your ear to the wood. On the other side, a heartbeat. Slow, patient, waiting. The woman's voice whispered from everywhere and nowhere. Open it, and face yourself. Close it, and stay forgotten. The choice was yours, but the floor began to crack. You have to remember. The shadow is your shadow. He is what you left behind. Her words hung in the air like smoke. The blue light from beneath the door pulsed in rhythm with your heartbeat. You pressed harder against the wood, felt the cold seep into your palm. The heartbeat grew louder, synchronized with your own. Then the woman's hand touched your shoulder, and you felt no warmth, only the static hum of forgotten things. She whispered again, but her voice was now a child's voice. The child's voice said, "He comes at night." You turned from the door. The woman was gone. In her place stood a little girl, maybe 6 years old, holding a purple crayon. She wore a yellow dress, and her hair was the same yellow as the stick figure in the drawing. She pointed at the closet door. The blue light now leaked from every crack in the room, from the walls, the floor, the ceiling. The girl said, "You drew him. You drew him to keep him out. But he wants in." The little girl walked to the closet door. She taped the drawing onto the wood, right where the handle should be. She said, "You have to remember the rules. No mirrors after midnight. No shadows in the corner. No doors that open by themselves." She turned to look at you, and her eyes were not a child's eyes. They were deep and old, like the bottom of a well. The blue light stopped pulsing. The heartbeat stopped. Everything was silent. The silence lasted 1 full minute. Then the closet door began to tremble. The drawing glowed purple, then red, then black. The little girl stepped back, her yellow dress now gray. She said, "He knows you're here. He knows you came back." The door handle appeared, slowly, like it was growing from the wood. It was black iron, cold and rusted. The girl whispered, "You have to open it. It's the only way out. But you can't open it. Not yet. Not until you remember why you locked him in." The little girl reached for the handle. Her reflection in the metal was not a child, but the woman from the mirror. The woman's hand wrapped around the handle, pulled. The door swung open. Inside was not a closet. It was a long hallway, lined with doors. At the end of the hallway stood a tall black shape with red eyes. The little girl said, "That's him. That's who you drew." The shape took a step forward, and the floor shook. The girl looked at you, and her eyes were your eyes. She said, "You drew him to protect me. But now he wants to protect you." The little girl stepped into the hallway. The door clicked shut behind her. Each door she passed had a drawing taped to it, just like hers. But these drawings were old, faded, torn. Some showed a house on fire. Some showed a man with no face. Some showed the woman from the mirror, screaming. The little girl whispered, "He collects them. Every child who ever broke the rules." She stopped at a door with a fresh drawing. It showed a woman with long dark hair, standing in a kitchen. The little girl recognized her own mother. Below the drawing, written in crayon, were the words, "She left because she loved you." The little girl touched the drawing. The paper was warm, wet. She pulled her hand back. It was covered in red. The door swung open by itself. Inside was her bedroom. But everything was backward. The bed was on the wrong side. The window faced a wall. And in the mirror, another little girl smiled at her. The mirror girl said, "You can stay. You can be me. I can be you. No one will know." The little girl shook her head. She said, "I have to find my mother." The hallway twisted. The walls became trees. The floor became dirt. The little girl ran. Behind her, the woman from the mirror crawled on the ceiling, her limbs bending in ways that should break. The woman laughed. She said, "You can run, but you are already inside." The little girl tripped. She fell into a pile of old photographs. All of them showed the same woman, but younger, happier, holding a baby. The little girl looked at the photograph. The woman was smiling. She was holding a baby. On the back of the photo, someone had written, "My daughter," before the rules. The little girl understood. The woman in the mirror was not a monster. She was a mother who lost her child. The little girl said, "You are not him. You are her." The woman stopped crawling. Her face softened. She said, "I forgot. I forgot I was human." The little girl held the photograph tight. She looked up at the woman crawling on the ceiling, her limbs bent like a broken doll. The woman was crying now. Tears fell from her upside-down face, landing on the floor like rain. The little girl whispered, "You are her mother." The woman stopped crawling. Her body twisted, and she landed softly on the ground. She stood upright, but her reflection was gone. She said, "I was her mother. Before I broke the rules." The rules said no mirrors. No reflections. But I looked. I looked too long. And she took my place. The little girl realized the woman was not the monster. The monster was the mirror itself. The woman pointed to a large mirror embedded in the trunk of a tree. It pulsed with a cold, blue light. She said, "That is the heart of the house. It feeds on reflections. It steals children and leaves mothers behind." The little girl stepped forward. She said, "How do I stop it?" The woman smiled sadly. "You don't stop it. You replace it. You give it a new reflection. One that is already broken." The woman reached into her own chest and pulled out a shard of glass. It was her own face, shattered and sharp. She handed it to the girl. "Take this. When you look into the mirror, do not see yourself. See me. See the mother who was forgotten." The little girl took the shard. It was warm, like a heartbeat. The little girl walked to the mirror. She raised the shard. Her own reflection stared back, but she did not look at it. She looked through it. She saw the woman behind her, the mother who had been trapped for years. The mirror began to crack. Not from the shard, but from the truth. The little girl said, "I see you." Not her. You. The mirror screamed. A sound like 1,000 windows breaking. The shard in her hand grew bright, brighter than the sun. And then, silence. The mirror was gone. The hallway was normal. The woman was gone too. But on the floor lay a single photograph. A mother and her daughter, both smiling. The little girl picked it up. She knew what to do. The little girl walked back through the house. The walls were still. The doors were straight. She entered her bedroom. The bed was on the right side. The window faced the garden. And in the mirror, only her own face looked back. She placed the photograph on the dresser. The mother and daughter in the picture seemed to breathe. She said, "You can stay here. Both of you." She turned to leave, but stopped. The mirror flickered. For just a second, she saw the woman again. But this time, the woman was smiling. She was holding her baby. And she was at peace. The little girl smiled back. Then she walked out of the house, into the light. The door closed behind her. It did not open again. The house stood silent behind her. It was just a house now. No twisted hallways. No whispering mirrors. The little girl walked across the field. The grass was green. The sky was blue. She felt lighter, as if she had carried a weight she never knew was there. She did not look back. She did not need to. The story was over. The mother was free. The daughter was safe. And the mirror? It was just glass now. Somewhere, in a quiet bedroom, a photograph sat on a dresser. A mother and her daughter, holding each other. And in the reflection of the glass, for just a moment, they moved. They hugged. They smiled. And then they were still. Forever. The end.